Employees, the lifeblood of any successful business. Human Capital Strategies offers resources to help employers meet their obligations, from compliance issues and insurance rates to compensation for injury or illness. Human Capital Strategies provides businesses like yours with integrated solutions to effectively manage your critical human resource needs. Contact them today at 480-962-1580 or visit the website hcscando.com. Human Capital Strategies, the next best thing to know employees.
We're going to lay some ground rules, which is really a definition of an employer. So, well, who here is an employer? I know Al's the owner, I know Liesel's an owner. Who are the other owners in the room? Come on, raise your hands. You can do it, it's okay. There's one, there's another. Okay, we have a few. Why did you go into business? Anybody? Come on, it's a little interactive. I'm going to require some to make money. Okay, what else? Is that the only reason? It might be the only reason. That's
I wanted to find balance.
Balance?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's too hard to work for other people.
Too hard to work for anybody else? Although you have the worst boss you've ever had, right? Anybody else? All right. I've asked that question, oh my goodness, I can't even count how many times at this point. And I have never once heard because I wanted to hire employees. Well, guess what? Success equals employees. They are a byproduct of doing well, right? And they are just part of life of an employer. But being a business owner and being an employer are completely different worlds. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
All right. So, if anybody has a definition of an employer, please share. You don't have to. You don't have to. I have one, so we can use mine if you want.
Someone with constant headaches.
Somebody with constant headaches. Not bad, actually. All right. Anybody else?
Sucker.
Sucker. These are all very accurate. Anybody else? That's good. All right. I'm going to share mine. Mine is an employer is a highly penalized, non-compensated tax collector and curer of all social ills. Thank you. Laughter from an owner back there. So, and that's the whole point. Is there is a lot of liability on the shoulders of the owner. All right. So who knows what a right to work state is? All right. What is it?
It's where the employee has the right to take the job, and you, as the employer, have the right to fire them for any.
That's at will employment. At will employment. That's what you just defined, which is actually true. Arizona is an at will employment state, and that's a fairly accurate definition of it. It's an employer or the employee can terminate the relationship for any reason or no reason whatsoever, as long as it's not discriminatory. Right, exactly. So that's the at will employment. Right to work state, and this just gets confused all the time, and the reason why we're bringing this one out, and this isn't even in the sins yet, it's just, this is how subtle some of the issues can be. We think we know what we're trying to deal with or take care of, and really it's not what we think it is. And this gets mixed up so often, and we figure, well, let's just point this out and kind of open up people's mind. Right to work state is simply a matter of you can't require somebody to be part of a union in order to work for you. Which Arizona is also a right to work state, but it has nothing to do with the termination of the relationship. That's the at will employment part.
Right, well, the first mistake that we often see is misclassifying employees as independent contractors. And this is particularly in situations where we see smaller employers and they don't really want to deal with the headaches and the hassles of having employees. So they think, well, I'm just going to hire them as an independent contractor, and that'll take care of those issues of having employees. I won't have to hassle with all of this. Exactly. Okay. All right, so the next one is violations of the NLRA. This is the National Labor Relations Act. This is the one where everybody's like, I don't even want to deal with this. I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have any unions in our company, and we don't need to worry about this one. And big red alert here. This applies to every employer. And Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act gives all employees, union and non-union, the right to engage in protected concerted activities. The employer may not discipline or discharge an employee for his or her protected concerted activities. So what does that mean, a protected concerted activity? Well, they cannot interfere with, restrain, or coerce employees in engaging in protected concerted activities like the organizing, forming, joining, or assisting a labor organization for collective bargaining purposes. But it doesn't even have to be that focused and that union specific. One thing the courts and the NLRB have said constitutes concerted activity is employees getting together and griping about their terms and conditions of employment, including their wages. So if employees get together and complain about their wages, that's concerted activity under Section 7, and you cannot discipline them.
Where she's going with that is a lot of employee handbooks tend to have this little clause in there that says if you discuss your wages with another employee, it may be grounds for
All right,
termination.
mistake number 3, furloughs. This is an interesting one. Furloughs are a hot topic right now just because of the economy being what it is. And, it's interesting. Furlough is mandatory time off without pay. Sounds like a really good idea, and it can be a good idea. Oftentimes, though, a furlough is just sort of a way of avoiding a tough decision. In fact, you need to reduce your workforce, perhaps, and you don't want to make that tough decision of letting people go, so you're going to have everybody kind of in a socialistic sort of way, have some decreased pay and some time off so that you don't have to make that tough decision of firing the person. But it can be problematic. It can lead to poor morale, and especially for your performing employees. And truly, if you do have some employees who are underperformers, probably the better bet is to go ahead and terminate them. But sometimes it can be a way to kind of get you through some lean times and get you to the point where you don't have to let anybody go. And that can help morale. So you have to look at it on an individual basis. The next mistake that we often see, mishandling final pay. This one happens all the time. You can go ahead and switch to Josh. So the Arizona Revised Statutes 23-353 governs, and this is all online. You can just Google Arizona Revised Statutes. They have everything available there that you can go in and review. But upon discharge, the employee must be paid within either 3 working days or the end of the next regular pay period, whichever is sooner. And people never remember that. So they always just pay them pursuant to the regular pay period. And most of the time no one's going to complain, but that's not accurate, that's not correct, and you really should be paying them within 3 days. The day that you terminate them or the day that they come in and resign, you should be having your payroll people figuring out what their final paycheck is and get that ready for them to be given to them within 3 days.
In Arizona, 3 working days for salaried exempt. Is that Saturday and Sunday as well?
Well, in Arizona, this doesn't
If I quit on
this
Friday,
doesn't vary for salary or non-salary.
if I quit my management job on Friday, do I start Saturday, Sunday, Monday? Or
No.
is it Monday,
No, it's-
Tuesday, Wednesday?
If you quit it works a little differently anyway.
Because you're a
If you're
salary,
terminated.
if you're a salary, also, yes, if you're a salary employee too, remember, if you've done any work in that week, then you have to get paid for the full week, regardless of whether, so then you'd have to ensure that they get paid for the full week. So, but also, again, this is upon discharge, not necessarily voluntary termination. This is upon discharge, so you have to.
But if your
discharge.
question is, you get fired on a Friday
Right.
afternoon,
Yes,
do you have to get paid by Monday?
yes.
What's your question?
No, it's 3 working days. My understanding is it would be 3 working
Monday,
days.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Because they could be working on the weekend, but rarely is that a working day. So I would say it's those days. I guess there's probably an argument that they can say, hey, my regular working day was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then maybe you would have a duty to give it to them earlier. But I think for the general population, even if you're exempt, it would be Monday. All right, mistake number 5. I'm going to try to move through these.
I was going to say, this
one's
is the
gonna-
problem with going from 7 to 12, right?
All right, FMLA, AD, AAA overlap. And I'm sure you guys know that these don't always apply. There's jurisdictional minimums. You need to have a certain number of employees for each of these statutes to apply. But we're going to assume that they do apply. And so the first hypothetical we're going to look at here is the permanent disability. January 9th, 2009, Bill hurt his back when he reached down and moved a 5-gallon bucket of scrap metal approximately 30 feet. Let's just assume this wasn't at work, because I don't want to have to deal with workers' comp issues, okay? So assume that he was doing this at home and he injured his back. He returns to his employer with a note from his doctor explaining that he has a herniated disc in his lower back and needs surgery to repair it. His leave is counted as FMLA leave. His recuperation takes longer than the doctor had anticipated. 8 weeks after surgery, he returns to the company's HR director with a doctor's note that says he needs an additional 3 weeks off of work to recuperate and for physical therapy. All right, so so now it's April 2nd, 1 day less than the 12 weeks since Bill first reported off of work due to the back injury. His boss has been periodically sending the HR director email notes questioning Bill's status and has begun to question openly whether Bill might be malingering. The HR director assures him Bill's used up all of his available FMLA leave and tells the supervisor that if Bill fails to show up the next day ready to go back to work, he will be fired. All right, so just before the start of the day shift the next morning, Bill arrives at work with another note from his doctor. This time the note says his recovery is moving along, quote unquote, according to plan, and that Bill should be ready to return to work with some lifting restrictions in 2 weeks. The note also states that Bill will likely have a 10% permanent disability per the AMA guides. The HR director, dreading the thought of having to face Bill's boss again, tells Bill that because he does not have a medical release to return to work that day, his employment is terminated effective immediately. Bill, a 15-year employee, can't believe what he's hearing and tells the HR director she'll be hearing from his lawyer. Should the company be concerned about Bill's threat? Yeah, absolutely. Good instincts, guys, because we see this happen all the time. I mean, it's so strange, but people will think, FMLA, you get 12 weeks if you try to take any additional time, and if you can't come back to work at the end of that 12 weeks, you're out the door. And you can sometimes do that. But the problem is, and we'll flip the next slide here, is yes, can be a problem because the doctor has established that Bill's back injury is permanent. Bill might now be considered disabled under the ADAAA. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the ADAAA, but the Americans with Disabilities Act, Amendments Act. So anyhow, ADA has been amended, and now it has been broadened to cover almost any injury that an employee has will be considered a disability. It used to be, for example, a lot of potential complaints by employees, if they had mitigating measures, for example, that would take care of the alleged disability, that would be considered, and you wouldn't have to treat them as if they were disabled. That's all been thrown out with the ADAAA. The only thing that is still allowed as a mitigating measure are contact lenses or glasses. Even hearing aids aren't included. So if someone has hearing loss and needs a hearing aid, even if with the aid of the hearing aid, they can hear better than I can hear, they'd still be considered disabled under the ADAAA. You might need to accommodate them if there's something that they need. So anyhow, the ADAAA requires employers to make reasonable accommodations to allow qualified disabled individuals to do their jobs, as long as the accommodations don't pose an undue hardship for the employer. So the director has to make 2 determinations when faced with Bill's request for 2 additional weeks off. 1, figure out whether to treat Bill as disabled under the ADAAA. And 2, if Bill is considered disabled, the HR director must determine whether the accommodation, the additional 2 weeks Bill's requested, is reasonable and does not pose an undue hardship to the employer.